I think I know what kind of guy you are. You're the kind of guy that knows things. You knew I'd come after you when I saw what you did to Roscoe. You knew I'd see your truck right outside. A work truck whose bed's never had anything in it other than a keg. And you knew I'd come in here and cause a problem that would most likely get me in trouble. But know what you don't know?
What's that?
What it feels like when I hit you. Because if you did, you never would have picked up that paint can.
I no longer think Ed should be in this league. My participation in the real deal is a privilege. I enjoy it. You should all know that. I'm the only one speaking about fantasy in mid-May. You should never assume that playing in a league close to 20 years grants you immunity. There should be contingency plans to offboard anyone who thinks they're bigger than the league, someone who takes from the league and gives nothing. When I say that this week means too much to you, it's because historically you need it more than I do. How the fuck do we have a rivalry if every other team literally plays me better than you do? You know how I get back at my ops in the real deal, Ed? I make sure I win chips after they do. Paul's listening to this like he's got my number when I won the very next year after he did. I also eliminated Paul in 2023. It was a week 14 win you're in situation, and guess what? Paul didn't get in, Cup did instead. He later reached the championship in 2020, and I made it last year. That speaks louder than any one-sided stat. If you would continue to sun me after your championship, I'd be singing a different tune. But what have you done since 2015? It's been 10 years since. You know, someone at the fantasy draft teased me about losing to you that year, and I simply told them, it's fine, he hasn't smelled a championship matchup since. But let's be clear, being terrible doesn't mean you ought to be kicked out of the league. Joe could go winless for another 20 years, and as long as he updates his lineup, he's good. As long as he doesn't draft Brandon Aubrey in the 3rd round next year, he's good. And of course, we could mention Hensel and how he could degenerate. But guess what? Statistically, they've been far better than you over these past 3 seasons. So when we combine your reckless management and the malicious motive behind the chaos, when we combine those 2 things with your 6-22 record since the infamous Tucker situation, what are we doing here? To quote Office Space during the downsizing scenes,
What would you say you do here?
Right? What the fuck are we doing? Because this isn't about an early season matchup. This is about your pattern of behavior and how you've made it abundantly clear it's all about sabotaging Bundy. Never forget, Pedro never admitted to anything behind trades. Pedro never even mentioned intentionally missing the 2018 championship. He just did it and said nothing about it. That goes a long way. Take Sean McVay, for example. After losing to the Birds last year, he compared their tush push to a rugby scrum. He also mentioned that there were some safety issues involved with it, but he outed himself as the biggest Eagle hater. What did you do? You sniped players and later admitted your intent behind the act. Which, by the way, I want to be specific about the sniping. There was a conversation between Eric and Paul about the Terry McLaurin selection being an Ed move. McLaurin was drafted right about where his pre-draft ADP had suggested, but going full Ed means selecting someone 6 to 8 rounds too early, i.e. Justin Tucker in 2023 and CJ Stroud in 2024. Ed could have just selected Allen and I would have just charged it to the game, but he didn't do that. Who knows who he could have selected in that 4th pick, how better his team would have been. He selected Allen, but he followed it up with CJ Stroud because he wanted to dangle Allen in my face. Ed has a sick and twisted view about what competition really is. And about that competition, going out of your way to sabotage a team who was out of the playoff picture in 2023. Consider that. Andy was coming off his 3rd title and one more on the way, I finished my 5-year hiatus from the playoffs, and Ed made me the target. I say that to say he doesn't need a sound motive for harassment. He just creates a situation and snitches on himself, and we get over it. But my embargo announcement worked, just like I knew it would. By terminating all trade talks with you, you ended up drafting an actual team. Though I'm gonna need to see that in 2026 to consider changing my trade policy. And you can't make this shit up. Ed sent me trade offers anyway. And that's another point about him. He doesn't respect boundaries. After I dropped the draft video, he immediately DM'd me and asked me about Braylon Allen in exchange for Stephon Diggs. And just as recent as this week, he made me an offer for Malik Neighbors and Tetairoa McMillan in exchange for Josh Allen. So after stating the no trade announcement, saying it in the video, and reminding him in the chat recently, that didn't stop Ed from hounding me. And he's probably thinking, oh, this is just great offers, just quality players. Ed, listen to me. Shut the fuck up. Listen to me. This isn't about an offer. I already accomplished my goal. Paul didn't give you a chance to get to Terry, and I'm kind of shocked that you didn't pick up Debo, but if you would have selected him, you would have kept him. You told me something in the chat about Jaden Daniels and he went to your favorite college. This isn't about loving players. The 5 years that I spent in Toronto brought me closer to the Buffalo Bills. If I saw a football jersey in the North, there was a 90% chance it was a Buffalo jersey. I love watching Josh Allen play, but if I refuse to join you for a steak dinner, that don't mean I don't like steak. It's not the food, it's the company. It's not the players, it's your stalking ass who attacks me and then acts like you're gaining something when I give you the attention that you practically begged for. When Andy whines about me mentioning him, it's because he did something exceptional. And if anyone does some exceptional shit, they're on my radar. But it's almost like you did it so I wouldn't forget about you. You, the New Orleans Saints of this league. At the base of all this trading and why he can't accept my embargo is his obsession, his fetish, his disgusting kink for LSU players. I can only imagine he offered half of his team for Justin Jefferson or some shit. And why, oh why is Josh Allen being offered when you tried so hard to keep him after selecting Kittle? And by the way, I voted no. And then you turn around and select him in the 3rd anyway because he's valuable. Do yourself a favor and keep him. You have the opportunity to be Hensel from last year, a quarterback and running back duo from the same team. Henry and Jackson accounted for 718 of Hensel's 1,446 points last year. He won the scoring title with that, and he had the best record at 12-2. So far, Josh Allen and James Cook combined for close to half of Ed's total points. You want to do Ed a favor this year? Reject his Allen offers. Make the playoffs. I'm trying to give you a chance to stay in this league because it won't hurt us. By removing you, it doesn't seem like we would screw up the championship timeline. Again, we're not rivals. Eric was Andy's rival during his run. Andy won 3 in a row and Eric's team won in the middle of that regime in 2020. They're rivals. Rivalries are settled at the top. Commission I have a rivalry at the moment. He made a slander-packed video about my playoff-less streak, and I responded later that year when he missed the playoffs, and I made it with 8 wins. Remember that? 2 years ago, Ed? That was the year you faced him in week 14. You announced sitting your players, and sure enough, that's what you did. Tank Dell was injured a week before, gave you a fat 0, just like you wanted. Kamish, however, didn't hold the cards that week, but he came back next year and beat me in the chip. Them's the breaks. I've experienced heartache in this league time and time again. I've also handed out some pain, beating the Commission 2012 by 1 point. Do you understand how much that hurt him? I hope it did. I'd advise you to give yourself the same opportunity, but it doesn't seem like you want to do that. I'll close with this. Minutes before the draft, some of you may remember that I mentioned if Ed screwed this draft up, it'd be over for him. And the responses I got, Ed, they'd surprise you. I'm not saying everybody agreed, but I didn't get much pushback. Last week of the season, you faced Team Bundy again. I wonder if you'll show up for that one. Would you do me the same favor you did to the commish? Of course you won't. Faggot. Go fuck yourself.